Hello and welcome to VR for Work. Happy Memorial Day. It's May 25th. My name is Rick and I'm your host here at VR for Work. At VR for Work, we take a look at the programs, platforms, and applications that are geared to helping you be more productive and get work done while in VR. VR for Work, in fact, uses one of these very platforms and applications to produce and record these sessions that you watch. Right now, I'm recording this while in my Oculus Quest headset using an application called Spaces. Definitely one you should try out. Check our YouTube site for our presentation on Spaces to find out more. But Spaces is an example of one of those applications that give you almost infinite possibilities here within VR. I'm able to, in a room in my house, be able to put in a presentation in a very large auditorium with an avatar that looks exactly, well, close enough to me, move the cameras around as you're seeing, and manipulate all these things comfortably while I'm presenting to you. And so with that, let's get started with our presentation today. We're going to be talking about an application called Spatial, not Spaces, Spatial. So we have Spaces, we have Spatial. I did one on vSpatial. So obviously space being the final frontier here in VR is definitely a theme for our developers. So I'm going to get situated here on the stage, and I've got my monitor and my camera now. And as soon as I get to my spot, we'll get started. Okay, got it on my desktop. Let's go dive in. So as I said, we're talking about Spatial. These images are from their website. And what you can see over here in this picture is the image of a realistic looking avatar floating in an office space in front of somebody wearing a HoloLens headset. And Spatial is a web-based meeting platform for mixed reality, virtual reality, and 2D. As such, it works on the Oculus Quest, which is what I'm using, HoloLens 1 and 2, Magic Leap, and on desktop and mobile web browser. So this is one of those platforms that bridge between virtual, mixed, and desktop, and users can join from any of those platforms. The users in the VR or AR enter a room that has preloaded assets. We'll talk about those file types that Spatial accommodates in just a little bit when we get into the demo. PC users can share their desktop, their cameras, presentations, so that they can kind of be in the room and kind of controlling the assets that are present. And Spatial has this unique way of creating photorealistic avatars from an image that it takes when you first sign up and sign into the application to represent you in the space. Users get provided a link so that they can join from their given platform, and you can create different rooms for different groups or purposes. And it took me a bit to get my head around the idea of a space being a container as such for a specific purpose or project, but hopefully we'll be able to convey that during the demo. And then rooms are saved like files with all that showed content during the session for users to go back into later. And so with that, let's jump in, and I'm going to start up Spatial from within my Oculus headset. Forgive me if I keep tripping over Spatial and Spaces. Try to keep that straight during my talk. All right, and here we go. And so as you come into Spatial, you're kind of greeted in this very kind of Zen looking, open, airy space. You have this menu that kind of floats up in front of you. that has a couple of options in it. Mine has 4 because over here on the left, there is a room that we're going to enter in a second that I've already kind of pre-populated prior to recording this. And then down in the lower right, you see my representation, my avatar floating there. And you can see that they have project rooms, design rooms, an intro, and then of course our VR for Work space. And obviously I kind of went through all of these when I first loaded up. We're going to load up the VR for Workspace. Now, this space in front of you that you can see that this translucent square, and you can see the words joining VR for Work there in front of you. This is kind of what we're going to refer to as the primary work board or work window. And as you can see, it populates with some material that I've put on there. And then up at the top, you can see who's present in the room. And you'll see 2 of my icons because I actually have signed into the room on my laptop in addition to now coming in on my VR headset. So there's 2 people in this room. I'm going to scan around a second just to kind of show you. You're kind of standing again in this large, airy, windowed room, actually very modern, comfortable furniture. On the back wall, I've placed this little looping video. We'll talk more about that later. Actually, it doesn't loop, but it runs through once. And a couple of 3D assets that I'd pulled in that is a big part of what Spatial provides. So you'll see me just looking around the room. Over here, I'm going to actually, because I have these 2 objects that ended up kind of floating in front of one another, I'm using the convention of, pointing and like most of these productivity applications, right? Your controller has a laser pointer extending from it. You rest that on a particular object, you pull the trigger, and then you manipulate. So this is actually my laptop screen, and you might notice some movement because I'm on the Spatial web page and it's active and actually looping a video on it. So this is a mirror that I'd found in the 3D assets section. And I kind of wanted to pull this in close so you can kind of get a sense of the avatar. So again, it takes this headshot picture when you first log in. It takes that, and as best as I can explain it, overlays it on a 3D model to give you kind of a realistic representation of yourself in the space. And then you get either a male or female body to choose from. Now, the second thing I'm doing here is I'm taking both controllers. You can see the 2 laser pointers extending out from the hands. And then I can pull both triggers, and then it's a pinch and zoom action to make things shrink and grow. Floating in front, oh, what did I do? Let me go back here, start this back up, try to get back to where I was. Okay. Floating in front of you is your primary menu. And this is kind of following you around just below or south of your field of vision. So if you look down, glance down with your head, you'll see this floating blue button. And as you kind of take your controller or your hand and hand over it, it extends out into these 4 buttons, right? So you can see, I'll bring this back up. The middle one is content, settings, spaces, scribble, mute. So let's pick scribble. So when I pick scribble, each member gets a different color pen. I happen to get purple. And you can write or mark in 3D space, kind of in the air. And you can create this word picture or drawing, if you will. And then above every single 3D object in the space, you get 2 buttons, which is either a pin or a exit or delete. In this particular case, I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to move over to actually show you some decent writing, which isn't mine, that you can kind of take a look at. Now, this was done by Laura, a person that I had met on the VR for Work Discord site, who agreed to kind of jump into the space with me. She wanted to see what it was like too. And so she kind of was playing around with the pen. And again, right here in the air, this is now a 3D object in the space that I can pin in place so that it can't be manipulated or moved, or exit. I'm going to leave it kind of floating there. I'm going to pin it. So now once I pin it, now I can't move it. I can't shrink it. I can't grow it. Of course, I can go unpin it and then I can manipulate it again. But once you've created something or placed something in the area, you can put it there semi-permanently, I would say. Now, this is a 3D asset with an old computer image that I grabbed. And again, growing it, shrinking it, kind of manipulating it, turning it around. And this is definitely one of the pieces, secret sauces that Spatial brings to the table. They want you to feel like you can get in here and actually touch and manipulate the things that you're working with or discussing while you're in a specific meeting talking about a thing. I could imagine, for instance, in my particular organization, we're talking about building a new building that you could get a 3D representation of that in this space and several people, and then actually kind of want to move it around, look at specific areas, grow it, shrink it. And these are just some of the assets you're able to bring in. Now, here, I just wanted to show that, again, this space, while it's very nice and again looks large and airy, the members are limited to the carpeted area, if you will. Right? Don't leave the carpeted area. So you can't go out here and stand on the patio or the deck and look off into the vista. It's just kind of there. All right, this was another asset that I pinned in the room to kind of remind myself and give us an opportunity to go through the desktop or the file types that you're able to bring in and manipulate while you're in a spatial meeting space, right? So you can bring in 2D or flat images, right? PNGs or JPEGs. You can bring in 3D models, like we were showing with the computer and the volcano. You can bring in presentations, but all documents and documentation must be converted to PDF. So I'll show you a little PDF that I have pinned to our board in a minute. You can screen share. And again, I have my laptop running on the other side of the meeting space, and we'll get to that in a second. In fact, it's over here. I'm pointing to it now. Again, extending my hand or my controller, the laser pointer goes out. You can see it kind of outlines in purple to indicate that I'm resting on it. Okay. And so I can share my desktop app, and then you can actually use Slack within the application to invite people. And we'll see that little invite icon in a minute. We'll go back through here. And again, I didn't mention there's videos you can bring MP4s in, but there was a file size limitation that escapes me for the moment. Okay, so here is our primary workboard. And those of you who have worked on projects or groups before have probably gotten used to, you take one wall of the meeting room or a whiteboard, and kind of that's where you populate all your ideas and thoughts and materials about the project. And you can see that up here in the upper right-hand corner, you have the save function. Now, the save function isn't just for the board, it's actually for everything in the room. And I learned this painful lesson during my time in Spatial. And then the invite, all right? You can see I've got two people here, and I've got some assets that I've already attached to the board. This particular one that we're looking at right here, the VR for Work, it's a PDF that started out as a PowerPoint. And I wanted to bring this in and then realized, oh, I can't bring in native PowerPoint. So I had to convert the PowerPoint to PDF. It's just a little simple 2-slide while I was, again, playing in the room. And then I can manipulate it, right? I can grow it, I can shrink it, I can move it around, I can place it in a specific point. You can notice that there is an arrow on the right-hand side of it that comes up that indicates, and now it's on the left-hand side, that I can flip to different pages within the presentation. So in PowerPoint, those are different slides. This is just a graphic image and another graphic image. And I can click the little pencil at the top, name this board anything we want. So if it's the name of a specific project or whatever, we can do that. And we can say, hey, this is the material for that specific project. We'll go over, and again, now this is my laptop screen represented within the room. And you can see that down here that it's being shared. and I'm on the vSpatial website, and that's what's running here in the background. And again, I can manipulate it and move it around and place it in some point in the room. Now, this is important that when I was in here with my colleague Laura, and we were bopping around the room, kind of playing with things, seeing what we could do and manipulate, it became obvious to us real quick that once you were in the room and you were in VR or AR, maybe you had the HoloLens headset on, or Quest headsets on like we did, that you could only operate the room with what had already been pre-populated. So until you got that material in there, you were not able to bring additional material in. So if we decided we wanted to look at a spreadsheet or PowerPoint or work up a Word document, that is not what you're going to do here in Spatial. Now, if you have somebody that's joined the meeting that is on a laptop, they can access their camera and their microphone through the Spatial app on their desktop, so they can have some presence in the room, but they can also drop things into the Spatial space, into the room, and then the people in the room could then take that and manipulate it, discuss it, and do more with it. But it's really not designed for you to do content creation within the room. Although I think there are some very important things that Spatial gives to you from a meeting perspective that we'll talk about as we go along here. But again, this just becomes another object that you can manipulate, move, place in the room, and pin to a specific location, so that, again, that other person can have presence or can drop things into the room for you to manipulate. Okay, so we're going to start looking at the controls here. Again, we did the scribble, mute's obvious. Now, when you click content, you get this little menu brought up that Spatial gives you some demo objects, right? You've got some 3D models, a landscape, some videos, the mirror that I brought into the room. I'm going to grab the little Mars rover here, and again, it's a 3D object. I can take it, I can manipulate it, I can move it around the room. We can, you can imagine if we have other people, we can walk around it, talk about it. Hey, let's move this thing from here to there. So there is this value certainly to this contextual object within a meeting that's not just kind of a concept, but an actual thing. Now I'm bringing up, I tapped the note feature, and I'm going to tap out a quick note. I didn't find the keyboard particularly responsive. I often found I was making errors. You really have to pause between each keystroke. But again, once you can put the note, and again, if you've done project management for any length of time, you've probably been in a process where you've used a lot of sticky notes to kind of workflow out something. And so again, I could really see the value. And when I was in here with Laura and her avatar, I will say that I often in my mind felt like there was another person in the space with me. So that avatar actually does a pretty good job of representing you being in a space or in a room with somebody. And that dynamic can be important and so much different than if you're on a conference call or a Skype meeting, in terms of getting something done. And again, in VR, and I would dare say AR, you really get your attention grabbed, and so you're not distracted or multitasking. Okay, so in this particular example now, I pulled up, let me back up just a bit. I had clicked on the search function, and so I'm searching virtual reality. It's going to bring up some images, some 3D models that I can pick from. I don't really know what I'm searching here, and I couldn't find any documentation on, is this going out to the internet? Is this something within Spatial itself that it's giving you access to? Again, I'm just not sure what I'm searching, but it pulled up 4 images and a couple of 3D models. And again, I can pull the 3D model out of the search, manipulate it, play with it, stick it to the board, keep it in our space. I'm going to jump forward. And again, I'm just picking a image. And so let's go back here. Now, again, you can bring up this spaces uh, menu. That's an actual item in Spatial Spaces. And so you can create as many rooms as you want, well, at least for right now. And each room can have its specific purpose. So the way I was conceptualizing this is similar to when, 15 years ago, I helped our organization implement SharePoint, because we were finding that people were managing projects, documents, communications through email. And obviously, trying to coordinate and manage content through email is not the best. And in SharePoint, the idea was, okay, you can have a specific container, if you will, for all the stuff that goes with a particular effort. So whether it was a project, whether it was a departmental uh, archive of material or communications, SharePoint could be a one-stop shop for email communication, PowerPoints, documents, policies, procedures, so on and so forth. And that's kind of what I think of when I think about spatial, right? These meeting rooms have become places where in a 3D environment, you can save content and revisit it as you want, again, in your headset or on your laptop. And it becomes the container for the thing you're working on, the effort or the group of people you're working with, to share content with. Now, certainly if that content are 3D models or drawings or buildings, that's very useful. If it's just kind of documents and PowerPoints, maybe not so much. Maybe then it's the SharePoint model, right? So let's go back up here to the desktop. Right now, Spatial is offering two pricing models. Free used to be, you can see I have it crossed out here, 3 rooms, saves. I call a room a save, right? So think of it as a container you're saving stuff in, with 40-minute sessions. That was the pricing model. Right now, they're advertising during COVID up to 3 rooms and saves and unlimited meeting times. And then they have the enterprise model, unlimited meeting length, unlimited save room projects, team administration panel, priority support, single sign-on, right? All those administrative features you might want. And then contact sales. They don't really kind of give you a sense of what that cost is. Just reach out to us and we'll talk about the number of people and the number of rooms and the number of minutes you think you're going to use, and we'll come up with a price. So right now you can jump in again on your Oculus or HoloLens or Magic Leap, or on your laptop. You always have to start on the laptop in order to sign up and get your avatar created, and jump into Spatial right now and get 3 kind of room containers that you can kind of meet with people, put content in, and see what you think about it yourself. Okay, so from our VR for Work assessment model, consumption and retention. I think this is different than how I've talked about consumption and retention in the past, in that, we're talking about meeting spaces and not content creation. So, I can be in there with several people, and I think we can have a very functional, a very active, and a very focused meeting in this space. Again, just because of the nature of VR and AR and the presence that we get from people being there. Again, even though I'm in this spare room in my house, I can be in a room with 5, 6, 7 other people having a meeting. So from a consumption and retention, as we're communicating and sharing, yeah, I think there's high value in that. Production, this isn't what Spatial is designed for, right? You don't go into Spatial to produce something. You go into Spatial to share, to generate ideas, to communicate. So this production and efficiency, I think, you will take those ideas out and then produce and be more efficient, hopefully. But while you're in the space, that's not what this is designed for. Flow and ergonomics, pleasant space, certainly, again, nature of VR, I'm in that space totally, no distractions with the people I'm with. ergonomics. You know, the UI is friendly enough. It was really easy to manipulate and learn how to move around once you knew the basics. So high marks on the ergonomics. And then social collaboration, and this is what spatial is all about, right? It's just social collaboration, getting together, having that meeting, putting the content in there, generating thoughts, ideas, and putting the sticky notes up there, and then maybe going back, sitting down at the computer, opening the room up, saying, "Oh yeah, I remember Laura said that we should change this slide. Let me go do that," and then I'll update the slide in the room so people can look at it next time. So that's what spatial does, and I think it definitely adds value to meetings, especially for these times when we all can't be in or don't want to be in a room together, because of the social distancing guidelines we're all trying to follow. So spatial, definitely a niche geared towards meetings, geared towards collaboration, geared towards that social element and sharing and generation of ideas and coordination of efforts around a project or a set of material. And I think you can get a lot done with spatial. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you. And one of the things I'm going to try to do at the end of each of one of these sessions is share a little thought with you. And today it's productivity is not just about doing more, it's about creating more impact with less work. Can't attribute that to anyone. I found it on the internet. So hopefully not stealing it, but yep, productivity is not just about doing more, it is about creating more impact with less work. So thank you again for joining us. And here's to you creating more impact with less work. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon here at VR for Work.